I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, President Donald Trump finally departs from the Holy Land. Jerusalem celebrates the 50th anniversary of its reunification, and we'll reveal this shocking new research that will reshape everything you thought about human origins. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Well, that's it, my friends. U.S. President Donald Trump has just departed from Israel following a 28-hour visit in the Holy Land. He may no longer be in the region, but the American leader is still pushing for a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. According to a senior White House official, the U.S. is focusing on building strong relations between Israel and its Arab neighbors. They're hoping that will build the momentum for a peace deal, and it sounds like the White House wants to see public relations between Israel and the Gulf Arab states. They've had covert security cooperation for years, and the White House is saying that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is willing to start immediate negotiations with Israel, although Abbas's remarks to Trump during their meeting do not convey such a readiness. The American administration claims that Trump and Abbas have agreed to continue their discussions on the issue of payments to jailed Palestinian terrorists, and Trump's peace envoy Jason Greenblatt will return to Israel next week for follow-up discussions. All of Israel and her supporters are celebrating Jerusalem Day, marking the city's reunification exactly 50 years ago today. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin presided over the opening festivities at the Western Wall while describing Jerusalem as the beating heart of the state and the Jewish people. He told those gathered that the city will forever remain Israel's capital. The president's own family has lived in Jerusalem since 1809. Israeli Army Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot also spoke at the ceremony, specifically addressing his comments to several veterans of the 1967 Six-Day War. He thanked the former fighters for their sacrifices that led to the returning of the Jewish people to their eternal capital. Other anniversary events also include a march throughout the city by flag-waving supporters and a spectacular sound and light show projected onto the stone walls of the ancient old city. On the eve of the holiday around sundown last night, several officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, gave speeches commemorating Israel's victory, with all vowing that Jerusalem will never again be divided. The controversy about the holiest city's sovereignty is always a hot topic, and today more than ever. Joining me now in the studio to discuss Jerusalem's political future is Dr. Mordechai Kedar, who served for 25 years in the IDF military intelligence and is an expert in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
So let's begin. Politically, what distinguishes the Palestinian population of Jerusalem from other Arab groups? Are they more or less amenable to the Jewish presence?
Well, the Arab population in Jerusalem are mostly families which moved to the city from the surrounding areas like Hebron and other villages. And they live in Jerusalem more or less not in a framework of clans as they live in the villages, but more nuclear families as usually there is in any city. However, Jerusalem with the years also became the refuge of homosexuals and lesbians also. Tel Aviv is the refuge of the Jewish homosexuals and lesbians, while Jerusalem is the Arab refuge. People come also from the Galilee in order to live there.
Interesting. Now, let's talk a little bit about how that's impacted the way in which Israel has dealt with the Arab population in Jerusalem. What has made it different, or maybe more difficult or easier for Israel to deal with that population?
Well, what Israel did is annexed the eastern city, or the eastern part of the city, to Jerusalem and united. And we declared that the city is united. However, Israel did not equate the services. First of all, the school system. The school system in the eastern part of Jerusalem still works with books and textbooks and all kinds of things which come from the Palestinian Authority. Outrageous. But the Israeli school system does not work yet in East Jerusalem. Nobody knows why it is so, yet it is the situation. Secondly, the infrastructure, sewage, water supply, streets look like and how buildings look like. All these things are still rather different between both sides of what was the Green Line. And unfortunately, Israel did not accomplish the unification because of various reasons connected to budget and connected to willingness and to manage.
So the question is, what should Israel be doing right now?
Well, if Israel wants to keep Jerusalem united, Israel has to treat both sides of the city equally. Infrastructure, education, and to kick out all the institutions of the PLO or the PA, which function in a way or another in the eastern part of the city, and demand that the embassies, all the embassies, are moved to Jerusalem, because this is the capital.
Now, what is your take on Nir Barkat's work as the mayor of Jerusalem? Is he doing the right things to make this happen?
He is doing the right things because he has his budget, he has his agenda, and he has his plan. However, all these things has to be different. Look, there is even a ministry in the government, the Ministry of Jerusalem, means how to promote the cause of Jerusalem. Yet, I don't see these bodies are working day and night in order to really unite the two parts of the city so they look alike and they function alike. Unfortunately, it takes time. The population is different because here is Islamic population, this is Jewish population. Yet, I know all these things. But if Israel wants to keep Jerusalem united forever, Israel must equate both sides of the city.
Now, I guess the final question for us, which is, very interesting, is there a legacy of the British mandate in, is it still with us in the conflict over Jerusalem in any way?
Sure. The British led the partition plan, which was accepted by the General Assembly of the United Nations in Decision 181 in November 29th, 1947. And according to this partition plan, which is only a recommendation of the General Assembly, Haifa and Jerusalem are international cities. Haifa because of the harbor, Jerusalem because of its status, should be under international control. This is the decision of the General Assembly of the United Nations, which gives all the nations until this very day the pretext and the reason to say, hey, Jerusalem is not yours, Jerusalem should be international. You are occupying Jerusalem, as Arabs say, but the facts actually do not go with this. First of all, the Jews were in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem was the capital of the Jews already 3,000 years ago. There are very little number of capitals in the world which are so long capital of any state. So definitely, way before London became the British capital, or Paris became the capital of the French. So definitely, we have a claim to Jerusalem. The thing is that the Arabs claim Jerusalem only to take out the Jewish heart. So we don't have it, because they claim that Jerusalem should be the capital of the future Palestinian state. When was Jerusalem a capital of any state connected to the Arab world or to the Islamic world? Not in one day in history. And Jordan occupied Jerusalem for 19 years, 7,000 days. Why didn't they establish a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital, as they demand today from us? What did they know between 48 and 67 when they occupied Jerusalem, which they do not know today, and demand us to do what they didn't do? The Arab League demands the same thing. Why didn't the Arab League demand it from Jordan when Jordan occupied the Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem? So this demand about Jerusalem to be a capital of the Palestinian state, which never existed. So this is totally baseless, this demand from the Arabs about Jerusalem. And unfortunately, at some point, Israel put Jerusalem on the negotiations table, because I really don't know why Israeli leadership of the 90s did it.
I think we're going to have to wait and see what happens now with U.S. President Trump being involved in the peace negotiations. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Archaeologists working near the Temple Mount have discovered a series of military artifacts that suggest a skirmish actually occurred on the Temple Mount in the 1967 Six-Day War. Members of the Temple Mount Sifting Project have uncovered Jordanian and Israeli bullets, uniform badges, and machine gun magazines. The IDF avoided shelling the Jewish holy site during the Six-Day War, but it appears the paratroopers and infantry who liberated the site did exchange fire with Jordanian forces. The Temple Mount, although under Israeli sovereignty since 1967, has been administered by the Jordanian Islamic Waqf, which illegally removed and displaced around 400 truckloads of earth from the ancient site in 1999. Since 2005, the volunteers of the Temple Mount Sifting Project have been going through the dirt by hand. They've even found a seal from the First Temple period with the name of King Hezekiah. That's all the way from the 8th century BCE. Sadly, as the artifacts are no longer in their original places, they convey less historical information than they should. The Israeli government has agreed to renew the work permits for around 74 Palestinian employees of SodaStream. The internationally famous company used to have a factory in the West Bank which employed Palestinian workers, but boycotts and threats led CEO Daniel Birnbaum to move the factory to southern Israel. The factory closure put some 500 Palestinians out of work. Birnbaum says that he is delighted to welcome back 74 Palestinian employees and that the Israeli government did the moral and honorable thing. The CEO believes that the mixed Israeli, Jewish, Bedouin, Arab, and Palestinian workforce at SodaStream proves that coexistence is in fact possible. A Palestinian employee who will have to leave his house at 4:30 a.m. to make it to the new SodaStream factory says that he doesn't mind the commute, as SodaStream is his second home. The salaries, much higher than the average Palestinian wage in the West Bank, are an additional enticement. We were so busy trying to keep you up to date on the news about U.S. President Donald Trump's lightning visit to the Holy Land that we didn't have time to cover some of the more twinge-worthy moments. So here's a quick look at some of the most attention-grabbing bloopers. First of all, it's abundantly clear that the White House needs to get a better spell checker. The administration listed one of the president's greatest goals as the possibility of promoting lasting peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Well, there really are incredible fruit in the Holy Land. That's probably not quite what Trump has in mind. Mr. Trump also may want to call in a geography tutor. The look on Israeli President Reuven Rivlin's face was priceless when his American counterpart told him during their Jerusalem meeting that he just returned from the Middle East. That's kind of funny since Israel is in the Middle East. The U.S.'s trouble in deciding where Jerusalem is was evident in other ways. During Trump's press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday, the White House feed identified the location as Jerusalem, Israel. But the following day, when the president spoke at the Israel Museum, the stream listed only Jerusalem. Meanwhile, after realizing Washington doesn't recognize a Palestinian state, it had to revise Trump's meeting with Mahmoud Abbas, the president of Palestine, to read the Palestinian Authority. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, meanwhile, became the first person in history to call Tel Aviv the home of Judaism. That's news to the Jewish people who consider Jerusalem as their eternal capital. Now, many people thought Trump might have snubbed the Knesset by not speaking there, but it turns out Jerusalem canceled the event. Without naming names, let's just say some of the Knesset members are known for trying to grab headlines with disruptive behavior or heckling. Another awkward moment was when the Israeli premier mistakenly called Melania Trump the first wife. The proper title is, of course, First Lady, not to mention that she is actually the third woman that Trump has married. Melania almost burned up the internet herself by appearing to reject her husband's offer to hold hands on the tarmac of Israel's airport, and then once again after arriving in Italy. And just in case you haven't had your fill of behind-the-scenes looks at the U.S. presidential visit, just wait till you hear about the incredible menu offered when Israel's first couple hosted the Trumps for their private dinner together. Israeli celebrity chef Moshe Segev was brought in especially to create the culinary masterpiece, which he says was inspired by peace, love, and gold. In fact, all of the courses were titled. The first, called Taste of America, were sliders with rice and kale chips. The classic condiments included an Israeli flair of ketchup made from beets and mustard with aioli. The Road to Peace second course was a salmon fillet caramelized in a fine miso sauce, and Segev's signature sprout salad, which he says previously tantalized the palates of many other world leaders and dignitaries. The Lifting Up the World main meal included 2 mouth-watering selections from which the 2 leaders and their wives could choose: beef tenderloin with foie gras and red curry served with creamy mashed potatoes, spinach, and spices, or fish fillet with green asparagus served with corn soup, red chili, marine, and coconut. In between courses, a foursome sipped on 2 very fine Israeli wines while trying to save room for the Big Apple dessert. Served on a plate featuring silhouettes of Trump and Netanyahu were warm chocolate cakes with coconut and gold leaves, an Israeli malabi with berries and coconut shavings, chocolate coffee and halva-flavored pralines, and of course, apple pie with crumbled cinnamon. Wow, I think I gained weight just listening to that menu. Art lovers, get ready. Joining us now in the studio is Shuki Cook, an accomplished self-taught artist and photographer from Jerusalem. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, so the title of this new exhibit that you have is called 1972 Portrait of an Artist. What is your exhibition?
My exhibition deals with photographs I've been taken on 1972 of all the members of the Art Association of the Artists' House in Jerusalem. And among them were very famous names of artists that I present partly, most of them, in this exhibition.
Now, it's interesting because when you first took these photographs, you didn't expect them to become artwork in any way, right?
No, not at all.
So kind of, what was your inspiration? What was the thought process behind choosing to show these photographs from so long ago?
I made a conversion between commercial photography, which I've made most of my life with a very, very much successful career. And I left photography because photography is no more a profession. Everybody is a photographer. You got your iPhone, you take your shots. And I'm dealing with artists now with special equipments that I brought, a special machine that I brought to Israel. And I'm dealing with artists, and I went back to my old memories, dealing with the Artist's House 45 years ago. And all the names I know now because I deal with art as well as I did with industry. I looked through my archive and I got shocked because the people and the shots were so much within memories embossed in me. So, I mean, I decided that I'll raise it up as an exhibition, looking through a very narrow pinhole into the history of art in Jerusalem.
No, I mean, these photos are absolutely incredible. What is one of your favorite photos? I know it's hard to choose because there are so many, but is there one in particular that stood out to you? And can you tell us kind of why the story of that image?
Yeah, let's go to Ludwig Bloom. I don't know if we can reach him right now. This is Joseph Hirsch, by the way, one of the most... I'll tell a little story about Joseph Hirsch, okay, because he was a drawer, okay, and he taught drawing in Bezalel. And he
Which is one of the most famous art academies here in Israel.
Yeah. And he called me and he asked me to come to his studio, and I asked him why. I'm just reproducing your things here and there. He said, I need your help in lighting. And I was sitting with him, building lights from table lamps for his still lifes that he created, paintings of them in his studio. And since that moment and on, we got a very warm relations, and he used to call me once in a while, look at this, look at that, what do you think about the lighting? And you know, I was a little guy and he was a grown-up. He was a master in his profession, and I was a beginner. But that was a very warm story to my heart.
Yeah, and very eye-opening for you as somebody who was so young in the industry. What makes Israeli art different from artwork that we see in other parts of the world?
I don't see much of a difference in the art. I see much of a difference in the, let's say, sense of feeling that these Israeli artists have because they live here. And Israel is a very special society with pressures, with fears. And, you know, it affects, in a way, some of them. Some of them just deal with normal art that you can be done anywhere else in the world. But they're all very good, I must say.
Now, what's so interesting is that the world of art has totally changed because of the new technology and the digitization of everything, everything in time. So you began as a photographer, and even that industry has completely changed.
It completely changed because digitizing brings the ability of focusing and light measuring into the hands of everybody. That was the first, let's say, professionalism that a photographer needed once, to measure the light properly, to make the right focus.
Right, which are issues.
Everybody, you don't care about your focus anymore. You don't measure any light. It's automatically done by a little computer or bigger computer in a bigger camera, okay? But what changed in the field is that, people are not relating to professionalism anymore in certain fields of photography. In commercials, commercial photography, still like photography, they don't care anymore. And like that, this field went down, and there's no appreciation to really a serious photographer that gives a lot of efforts to get a decent result.
Well, I am so excited to go and check out your exhibition. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, now here's some exciting news for sports fans in Israel. It's just been announced that the city of Netanya will be hosting the 2018 Men's World Lacrosse Championships. This is a really great honor because it marks the very first time the tournament will ever be held outside of the United States, Canada, England, or Australia. And those are all pretty well-known bastions of lacrosse. But the contact team sport is gaining a lot of traction in Israel. The number of local devotees is rising steadily, and the national teams racking up more and more victories in world play. Just this past year, Israel was a second-place medalist at the international competition. The head of the Israel Lacrosse Association, Scott Neese, says that the team is now ranked 7th in the world, and the decision to hold the 2018 event is a testament to recognition of Israel's success. All over the world, soccer fans can be known to take things a bit too far, and Israel is no exception. In fact, one Jerusalem soccer team has fans that are so extreme, Netflix couldn't help but buy an Israeli documentary on their intensity. Netflix has purchased the rights to Forever Appear, an Israeli doc that covers the 2012 to 2013 season of the controversial Jerusalem football team, Beitar Yerushalayim. The film depicts the difficulties and low attendance the team encountered that season. Then owner Arkady Gaidamak's decision to bring in 2 Chechen Muslim players sat poorly with the team's hardcore fans. Beitar Yerushalayim's La Familia Ultras are known for their Kahanist ideology, their anti-Arab chants, and their opposition to Muslims on the football team. While the club has publicly condemned the group and even barred it from matches, their fury over the signing of the Chechen players was enough to substantially affect turnout. There are plenty of shots in the documentary of a near-empty Teddy Stadium during Beitar games. It hasn't been reported how much Netflix paid for the documentary, but similar deals have been made in 5 figures. The film has already appeared on PBS in America and the BBC in the UK. Most people have been taught that humans came out of Africa, but did they? Some new research is flipping that theory on its head and claiming that our ancestors actually started their journey in the good old Mediterranean.
Proto-human fossils in Greece and Bulgaria are upending conventional theories on human evolution. A new theory about hominid fossils in the Balkans has a startling implication. The ancestors of mankind developed not in Africa, but in the Mediterranean. And this means the precursors of modern humans may well have passed through the land of Israel on their way south to Africa. Professor Madeline Baum has been looking at El Greco, a species that existed some 7.2 million years ago in the Balkans. And based off its dental roots, she's concluded El Greco wasn't just any great ape, it was the ancestor of humankind. The Balkans had a harsh climate back then, with 10 times more dust in the air than there is today in the Mediterranean. For El Greco to survive in such an inhospitable place, it may have developed unique biological or cultural characteristics that it passed on to early humans. And here's where it gets interesting. For El Greco's descendants to migrate from the Balkans to sub-Saharan Africa, they would have almost certainly passed along the eastern Mediterranean coastline. And what's on the coast? Tel Aviv.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
Now for our Hebrew word of the day. We all know how to complain, and here in Israel, that's basically a pastime. So today's word is nunnik, meaning an annoying nuisance. A nunnik is someone who doesn't know when to stop talking. Picture Steve Urkel or Woody Allen at his whiniest. The word comes from the Russian nudnie, meaning boring, and there's nothing more boring than someone who won't stop complaining about how the Dead Sea is too hot or the air conditioning is too cold. So please do us a favor when you come to Israel, don't be a nudnik. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be clear to partly cloudy with a low of 60 or 16 degrees Celsius, and tomorrow is expected to be partly cloudy with a slight rise in temperatures and a high of 78 or 26 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.6 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.